Our undefeated Chicago Bears, yeah, that's right, undefeated Chicago Bears are going to be taking on the New York Football Giants in week 2 of the NFL season at Soldier Field. What are the matchups going to be like? How is each team looking? What's the final score going to be? I'll give you guys my predictions right here. Before I begin talking about these matchups, I want to talk a little bit about my sponsor for this video, DraftKings Sportsbook. Guys, if you are like me, you know that the media is sleeping on the Chicago Bears. Okay, the general public does not think the Bears are going to be a good team, and all of that flows through to Las Vegas in the betting odds. The betting odds are in our favor, guys. If you want to bet on the Chicago Bears, like I have been doing over the past couple weeks, you could potentially win a lot of cash, if our team actually lives up to our expectations. So if you want to cash in on the Chicago Bears success, or really any other team you believe in like MLB, NHL, NBA, like they have a lot of different teams and leagues you can bet on, I would highly recommend downloading the DraftKings Sportsbook app. It's the #1 top-rated sportsbook app in all of America. It's based right here in the USA, so you can rest assured your funds are going to be completely safe and secure with them. You can withdraw money or deposit money at any time at your own convenience. And guys, I've actually been using this app for the past couple months, even before the sponsorship. So based on firsthand experience, I can tell you that even as a beginner, I didn't know too much about betting odds. I didn't know what the spread meant. I didn't know what all these crazy numbers meant. It was so easy for a beginner like me to use. So even if you don't know that much about betting odds, like what these numbers mean, the app is so ridiculously easy to use. And I would highly recommend it if you want to make watching sports a little bit more interesting and exciting. Now, they have a new promotion going on right now where if you are a new user to DraftKings Sportsbook, if you haven't used the app before, you can download it right now using the link in the description box down below. And if you get the app, when you sign up, use promo code The Windy City. If you use that promo code, you can place a bet, a $1 bet, and win up to $100 by placing a bet on any NFL team. So probably you're going to place that bet on the Chicago Bears. You could win up to $100 if you're truly lucky. So head on over to the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now and check out all they have to offer, because they don't just have betting on teams, guys. They also have player props. They have, live betting. You can bet on Mitch Trubisky to win MVP. So if you're a true Mitch believer, go and play some money on that. Maybe some spare change. You could turn that spare change into a lot of cash if we somehow get lucky and Mitch Trubisky wins MVP. So go find a bet that you like, place some money on it, and potentially get lucky. Now, if DraftKings Sportsbook is not available in your state, they also have another app called the DraftKings Fantasy app, where they're giving out millions of dollars in prizes every single week. So if this app is not available in your state, download that app instead. But overall, guys, if you believe in the Chicago Bears, if you want to cash in on your belief, I do believe DraftKings Sportsbook is the best app to do that. What's up, guys? I hope all of you are doing well this week. We have a week 2 matchup against the New York Giants at Soldier Field. So technically it's going to be our home opener, but I say home opener in quotation marks because there's not going to be any fans there, guys. So it's not going to be anywhere close to the same. Okay, the fans were going to be at Soldier Field. They were going to be loud. They're going to be proud. I mean, we have a diehard fan base, okay? So not having them at Soldier Field, it's definitely going to make a difference to some extent. Like, our defense is not going to be as pumped up. The energy is not going to be the same. So it does truly suck, but we are playing in the middle of a pandemic. So whatever football you get, man, I'm happy to get that, okay? I'm just thankful we have a football season, for crying out loud, because at some point it looked like we were not even going to have that. So thankful for football. But guys, before I begin talking about this matchup, the Giants and the Bears, I want to talk a little bit about our last game and kind of about the reactions that people have been having on social media, and not just social media, but a lot of the people I talk to, some of my friends. All of you guys have been hating nonstop, complaining nonstop about the victory we had last week, okay? All I've been hearing is that, oh, we didn't deserve to win this game. We still suck. We're still not going to do anything. Guys, shut up, okay? A win is a win. This is the NFL. You take wins when you get them. Like, every win in the NFL is not going to be like a enormous, impressive win. I would 100% take an ugly win like this over a pretty loss, because at the end of the day, the only thing that matters in the NFL is if you win or lose this game. Yeah, we got super lucky with DeAndre Swift dropping that game-winning touchdown, but at the end of the day, we had a lot of close plays that also did not go in our favor. And if we made those close plays, we could have been up by a lot more. So I don't get why so much of the fan base is constantly complaining after a win. Enjoy the win, enjoy the dub. Yeah, you were 100% allowed to criticize all the bad things that happened in the last game. Obviously, Trubisky's play over the first 3 quarters was not great. Not just Trubisky, but the entire offense, okay? We were driving down the field with ease at some points, but we just could not convert on third down or in the red zone, which is why we didn't score points really until the fourth quarter. And our defense, man, Danny Trevathan and Chuck Pagano, they really disappointed me in so many ways, okay? First of all, Danny Trevathan, I went back and watched the film and he looked absolutely slow in coverage. I mean, he looked like he could not even keep up with this man. He looked lost out there. Obviously, that game-winning touchdown would have been on him, okay? DeAndre Swift was Danny Trevathan's man. He didn't get his head turned around and he let Swift just go past him for the game-winning touchdown, but he got absolutely saved when Swift obviously dropped that touchdown. And Chuck Pagano, man, don't get me started on him. I mean, I have not been a big fan of Chuck Pagano for some time now, okay? Dating back to last year, I was never really a big believer in his play calling because, guys, with the talent that he has on this defense, I mean, our defense is taking a lot of steps back from 2018. It's nowhere close to the same defense it was in 2018. I mean, the pass rush is not there. The interceptions, the turnovers, they're not even close to being there. And I just hate how the middle of the field always seems like it's wide freaking open. So Chuck Pagano, man, he also, like, at some point I saw on Twitter, he had AKIEM HICKS dropping back into coverage. Like, Chuck Pagano, man, I mean, what are you doing, okay? You should never have one of your best pass rushers dropping back into coverage. And out of all people, AKIEM HICKS, the dude that is like 350 pounds, he's massive, he's big, he's strong. He can't keep up with receivers in the open field. Now, obviously, he wasn't like covering anybody, but to even be back there and not having him rush the passer, that's such a waste of a down. And if I read you guys the stats from the Bears defense in the last game, we allowed 426 total yards to the Detroit Lions without their number one guy. I was so extremely disappointed in how our defense played. Now, obviously, we didn't have Robert Quinn in there, so hopefully we have Robert Quinn back for this matchup against the Giants because there was no pass rush on the opposite side of Khalil Mack. And speaking of Khalil Mack, guys, I saw a lot of people on Twitter also like criticize Khalil Mack, talking about how he was nowhere to be found, okay? Where's Khalil Mack? Khalil Mack finished second in pressures among all pass rushers. So even though he wasn't getting his hands on the quarterback, even though he wasn't getting those QB hits, those QB sacks, he was still getting pressure on the quarterback, still playing pretty good run defense as well, okay? Go back and watch the tape. Our 100 yards we allowed to Adrian Peterson, they were not of any fault to Khalil Mack. It was more in the interior of our defensive line, specifically not having Eddie Goldman. So don't go blaming Khalil Mack for what happened last week because he still played a pretty good game, even though he didn't per se get his hands on the quarterback. Now, we hope that changes for next week because hopefully next week we have Robert Quinn back. Not next week, I mean this weekend. Hopefully we have Robert Quinn back. He's still on the injury list, but he's actually practicing now. So there is a decent chance he could play. I'm still not 100% sure, but he could actually play this week. And if he does, you know, Khalil Mack's stats are going to go up. He's going to get those sacks. He's going to get those QB hits. So I would not worry about Khalil Mack. But overall, obviously, our defense did not have a good day. We allowed too many yards on the ground, and that allowed them to also pass all over us. So not a good day from our defense. Pretty disappointed, but hopefully we can rebound in the next game against the Giants. And quickly talking about our offense again, I mean, I have to reiterate the point that Trubisky's comeback in the fourth quarter, I mean, that was absolutely ridiculous, okay? The Mitch Trubisky that we saw in the fourth quarter, he was a completely different quarterback than the Mitch Trubisky that we saw over the first 3 quarters of this game. Now, the question is, which Mitch Trubisky are we going to get for the next game and for long term, okay? Are we going to get the Mitch Trubisky that plays phenomenal ball, or are we going to get the Mitch Trubisky that makes far too many rookie mistakes? Still, the jury is still out. Like, nobody actually knows. I'm hoping that we can get more of what we saw in the fourth quarter, but, you know, if not, Nick Foles is still there. So I'm not like 100% right now saying that Mitch Trubisky has totally turned around his career because of one fourth quarter comeback. He still has to prove himself more in the future, but I did like that fourth quarter comeback because, guys, some of the throws that he made, which, by the way, guys, on all of his touchdown passes in that fourth quarter, his receivers had less than 1 yard of separation on average. So the receivers didn't have much separation going, but Trubisky placed the ball perfectly right where they could catch it and right where, you know, the defender could not make a play on the ball. So those were all beautiful balls by Trubisky. I don't get why so many people are discrediting his performance because he went up against poor competition. I mean, the DBs were all draped to our wide receivers. He had to make some tough throws just in time, right on the money, and he made every single one of them. So beautiful ending of that game by Trubisky, but let's see which version of Trubisky we get for the next game. Let's move on now to the New York Giants. How did they do in their last game on Monday Night Football against the Pittsburgh Steelers? which, guys, I saw like 75% of that game. I didn't watch the whole thing. I had a lot of homework to do, but I did watch the majority of that game. And one thing I have to say about that game, which I don't get why more people are not talking about it, Daniel Jones actually looked pretty damn good, okay? I know the media loves to hate on him. A lot of fans love to hate on him because of his fumbling issues from last year. Obviously, he had like the 5th most fumbles in NFL history for any player last year. So he had a lot of ball security issues, and obviously he was a rookie. He made a lot of growing mistakes. But guys, in that game against the Steelers, which by the way, guys, the Steelers are a really good defense. Like their front seven is probably among the best in the NFL. Their secondary also locks things up on the back end. So they could be among like the top defenses in the NFL this year. But even against that defense, Daniel Jones threw for 280 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a passer rating of 80. Now, obviously, he had 2 interceptions too, which one of those interceptions, that was a big interception because it came on the end of like a 19-yard drive that they had in the 3rd quarter to like tie up the game. And it was a horrible mistake by Daniel Jones. Obviously, he got hit while throwing the ball by Cameron Hayward, but he should have thrown that ball away and taken the field goal instead of trying to force a pass in the end zone. So he still makes these dumb mistakes sometimes, still, you know, doesn't have the best ball security, I feel like. But guys, some of the throws that he made in that game, they were beautiful throws, okay? That post route to Darius Slayton in the first half, I think it was like a 20 or 30, maybe more yard play. But Darius Slayton ran a beautiful post route, and Daniel Jones right on the money with it, right on time. Okay, he got a big touchdown there. It was 3rd and 14 in his own end zone, and he converted that somehow when there was also pressure in his face. And I also remember on 4th and 1, like he made a crazy throw across his body to either it was SAQUON or Darius Slayton or somebody else. But like that throw he made, there was like really nobody else open. So to have the presence of mind to go across your body and make that throw, especially on 4th down, that was a ridiculous play. So honestly, guys, like I'm a big believer in Daniel Jones. I think he has what it takes to be a franchise QB in this league. But the thing that he doesn't have, which us Bears fans know far too well, you need to have if you are a young quarterback, is a decent offensive line. If you guys saw the offensive line, how they played against the Steelers, they were playing like Swiss cheese. If you saw how our offensive line played last year, it was pretty much similar to that, except even worse. Because guys, Daniel Jones was under pressure pretty much the entire night. I think they had like 3 sacks, 8 QB hits, and what didn't show up on the stat sheet also was that Daniel Jones was running for his life pretty much every other play. So he was throwing under pressure all night long. The front seven was getting in his face. The secondary was locking things up on the back end. And overall, it was a really tough night for Daniel Jones based on the situation he was placed in. And also his tight end, Evan Ingram, I saw he dropped like a lot of passes. I think he dropped like 2 or 3 passes, and he wasn't really a factor in the blocking game either. It was pretty poor blocking. So he didn't have a lot of help around him, but he still had a decent night. So my hat goes off to Daniel Jones, man. I think he can do damage in this league. I just cannot get beyond that offensive line and how bad it was, because if it plays anything like how it played against the Steelers front seven, they are going to have a tough time against our front seven as well. Now, I know we played pretty poor against the Lions, but if we have Robert Quinn back, and also if we go up against an offensive line as poor as the Giants offensive line, I think we could seriously do some damage and force Daniel Jones into a lot of dumb mistakes and some interceptions as well. So overall, it was a terrible night from the Giants offensive line, and we also saw that in the fact that Saquon Barkley, one of the best running backs in the entire NFL, he had 6 rushing yards the entire night on 15 carries. That's like 0.4 yards per carry for one of the best running backs in the NFL. Like, that should not be happening unless your offensive line is playing absolute garbage. I went back and watched some of the tape as well. There were not really many holds to run through if you are Saquon Barkley. So guys, they had absolutely no run game that game. Daniel Jones actually finished with the most rushing yards. He had 22, and that offensive line was just Swiss cheese the entire night, which is why the Giants only scored 16 points the entire game, which even scoring 16 points, I mean, that's pretty good for the way their offensive line played. Now, talking about the Giants defense, they didn't impress me that much, okay? I know they got a few acquisitions over the offseason, and they played a pretty decent first quarter. They only allowed 3 points. They had Big Ben on his back. The run defense was pretty good, and they were pretty much bottling things up in the first quarter. But as more time passed, it seemed like they just got gassed because they were not the same defense they were in the first quarter. They got ran over on by the entire Steelers team. They allowed 113 yards to Benny Snell, and overall, they allowed 141 rushing yards. So obviously, not good run defense. And to Big Ben, Big Ben had 230 passing yards. He had a passer rating though of 117, so they were allowing a lot of easy completions to Big Ben. Although they looked improved from years prior, they didn't look like a top defense whatsoever, and they didn't have many playmakers show up late in that game like other defenses do. So although it was a good debut by Blake Martinez, which we know far too well, okay, coming over from the Green Bay Packers, he had 13 total tackles, 8 solo tackles, and 1 tackle for loss. And guys, Blake Martinez always finds a way to get to the ball, so he's a pretty good linebacker. Their front seven is also improved. They got guys on the interior like obviously, you know, Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence, and some other ones too. Now their secondary doesn't have like a lot of playmakers on it. They don't have any elite talent there, but they do have some decent players, so they can be at least an average secondary maybe at some point this year. So overall, you know, it wasn't like a terrible, ridiculous day from the Giants defense, but they didn't actually impress me at all. Like they weren't making plays out there. They weren't, you know, actually stopping this Pittsburgh Steelers offense at all late in this game. So pretty average at best day from the Giants defense. Now that we've talked a lot about how the Giants and Bears did in their last matchup, let's talk about how they're going to do facing off against each other. And guys, the number one key to this game, which I'm not going to say my 3 keys to a Bears victory right now, it's going to be in a separate video, but pretty much the biggest matchup in this game is going to be the Bears front seven versus the Giants offensive line. Like the entire game just comes down to that. If the Bears front seven can wreak havoc on this Giants offensive line, if the Giants offensive line plays as poor as it did against the Pittsburgh Steelers front seven, this is going to be an easy dub for the Chicago Bears. Because guys, again, like I've been mentioning pretty much this entire offseason, you know, the Bears front seven has so much elite talent on it, okay? We have Khalil Mack. We hopefully have Robert Quinn coming back, which, guys, if we have Robert Quinn coming back, then I have a lot more faith in this team and this defense to have a big day. But we also have guys like obviously Roy Robertson Harris. We have Bilal Nichols. AKIEM Hicks had that huge sack on Matt Stafford late in that game. If AKIEM Hicks can get going earlier, that would be a really good thing for the Bears defense. We obviously have Danny Trevathan, who had a pretty poor game, but hopefully he can rebound. Roquan Smith had a pretty decent day against the Lions, and he's, you know, primed for hopefully a breakout season this year. So we have so much talent on this front seven. And if it actually gets going against this Giants offensive line, I just don't see a way in which the Giants are going to win this game, because you saw last game how Saquon Barkley was like, he was a non-factor in that game because of how poorly the Giants offensive line was playing. You know, obviously Daniel Jones, he was throwing under pressure pretty much the entire night, and somehow he still had 280 yards, but he had to really earn those yards. Guys, going up against a secondary like the Chicago Bears, where you have Eddie Jackson back there, you have Kyle Fuller, you have a young rookie in Jalen Johnson who was making a lot of plays, which, by the way, guys, Jalen Johnson, he had such an underrated game against the Lions, a phenomenal debut to his career. It's just going to be way too hard for Daniel Jones and this offense to get the ball down the field and score any points. And there's going to be a lot of interceptions, a lot of fumbles, hopefully as well, because if this front seven actually gets going, if Khalil Mack gets in Daniel Jones' face, if Robert Quinn is out there too, I mean, it's going to be turnover city in Chicago, and it's going to be a big Bears victory. So as a Bears fan, obviously I'm hoping that happens, but they're probably going to get together, watch film, make adjustments, and figure out like what went wrong. But even if they do that, guys, like they don't have enough talent on this offensive line to compete with the Chicago Bears front seven. I saw that, what was his name? Cameron Fleming, their swing tackle, who's playing a key role now on this offensive line. He was absolutely horrible the last game, and he's not really a good player overall. So their tackles are a position of weakness probably. I know they also have Andrew Thomas, who isn't that bad, but in the interior on their offensive line, their guards and center, they didn't play that well either. So going up against AKIEM Hicks out of all people, you know, that's going to be a very difficult task for them. Now, I also have to say again that if we do get Robert Quinn back, this changes pretty much the entire matchup, because then I think that the Bears are definitely going to win this game. Right now, I have them likely winning this game, but I don't think it's going to be a big victory at all. But if Robert Quinn does enter this game, I think it's going to be a big victory, because I do not see how this Giants offensive line is going to stop, you know, any of our pass rushers, specifically AKIEM Hicks, Robert Quinn, and Khalil Mack. The combination of all three of them, that is virtually impossible to stop. Our secondary is going to have a tall task handling Darius Slayton, who had over 100 yards receiving, and I think he had 2 touchdowns as well, and he runs some phenomenal routes, okay? His route running is among the best right now in the NFL. He's only in his second year, but guys, some of the routes that I watch him run, they're so crisp, they're so clean. He's going up the field so fast. He has elite speed. Also, his hands are so reliable. So Darius Slayton is one of the best receivers. He's going to be one of the best receivers in the NFL pretty soon, and he's going to be tough to handle. But beyond him, guys, none of their other weapons truly scare me, okay? Obviously, they have Sterling Shepard, who had 47 yards receiving. Golden Tate is actually injured right now, and I don't know if he's going to play for our matchup. So if Golden Tate is out, it's another pretty big weapon that they lost. I know Golden Tate is like 32 years old, but as of right now, pretty much the main guy that we have to worry about is Darius Slayton. And if we handle Darius Slayton, it's going to be a pretty good day from our defense. Now, the one guy that does scare me, though, is obviously Saquon Barkley, their best player, probably on the entire team. Okay, Saquon Barkley is a top 3 back, in my opinion. If he had an actual offensive line to run behind, this dude could go for maybe like 1,400, 1,500 yards because, guys, this guy has all-world talent. He's one of the most talented running backs that I have ever seen, both in the run game and in the passing game, okay? Last game, even though he had like no rushing yards, he had about 60 receiving yards, so he was active as a pass catcher. Honestly, guys, our front seven is going to have their hands full trying to stop this man, trying to keep him to under, hopefully, like 50 all-purpose yards, because if we can actually get Saquon Barkley under 50 all-purpose yards, I think the Bears have a very good chance of winning this game, because if Saquon is not involved, their offense is not going to score that many points, and they're going to become way too one-dimensional. Now, switching over to the Bears offense against the Giants defense, I think the Bears do have an advantage in a lot of different areas. Obviously, I know pretty much everybody is still, they don't know what to think about Mitch Trubisky. Either we could get the Mitch Trubisky from the first 3 quarters or the last quarter, and obviously Giants fans are not going to think highly of Trubisky because pretty much everybody besides Bears fans think Trubisky is an absolute bust, the worst quarterback in the entire NFL. They think he's not capable of doing anything. So naturally, nobody's going to expect anything from Trubisky. But if I think about, the receiving talent that we have on this team, Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, Darnell Mooney, who all 3 of them had phenomenal games for the first game of the season, I don't see who in this Giants secondary is going to stop them. Okay, obviously they have guys like Bradbury, they have Corey Ballentine, so they have some decent options, but they don't have any superstars. You need some top-level talent in the secondary to stop these Bears receivers because we saw what they did last game in Detroit. I mean, both Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller, they had huge games, especially in that 4th quarter. So the Giants secondary, they're going to have their hands full trying to contain the Bears receivers. If you look at their linebackers, I do like some of their linebackers. Obviously, Lorenzo Carter has had big games in the past. Blake Martinez, we know far too well from the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, this guy has made a ton of big plays against us in the past while playing for the Packers. So that's a big guy to watch out for in the middle of this Giants defense. And overall, they do have some other talent as well, like I already talked about on that interior of that defensive line. Leonard Williams, Dexter Lawrence. You have guys like also Dalvin Tomlinson. Like, they have a decent interior defensive line, and that's going to make it tough for David Montgomery to actually run the football. But if Cody Parkey, James Daniels, and Jermaine Ifedi play as well as they did in the last game against the Giants, like, we're not going to have any problem running the football because, guys, the way that they played, there were so many holes open on the interior for Tariq Cohen, David Montgomery, and Cordero Patterson to run through. So that's going to be a big battle up front, the Giants defensive line versus the Bears offensive line, specifically the interior, to see if we can actually run the football inside. Charles Eno and Bobby Macy are nowhere close to being like good tackles in the NFL, but hopefully they can be adequate against this Giants pass rush because the Giants pass rush doesn't have any superstars on it. So without that superstar talent, without that top end talent, they might struggle to gain pressure on Mitch Trubisky unless they send a lot of guys. So they're gonna have to blitz pretty often, and I do expect them to play a lot of zone coverage because that's what works against Mitch Trubisky. When the Lions went to man-to-man in the last game, Mitch Trubisky had a lot of success. So expect the Giants to see that, take advantage of it, and throw a lot of different looks at Mitch Trubisky with a lot of zone coverage and a lot of blitzing involved. I saw in the last game, the Giants actually threw the Steelers like some 2-man fronts as well. So they mix it up a lot. They have a 3-4 defense sometimes. They have a 4-3 formation sometimes. They had 2-man fronts as well. And, it's going to be a lot of variety from this Giants defense. So hopefully Mitch Trubisky and the Bears offense are able to figure it out. Now, with all that being said, let me get into my score prediction for this game. And guys, I have the Chicago Bears going into Soldier Field and coming out of there with a dub by the score of 24-17. So a 1-touchdown victory, which isn't going to be as much as a lot of you guys are predicting. I saw a lot of predictions online. I mean, people are predicting a blowout victory for the Chicago Bears. But guys, I'm not going to predict that until I see it because the last game was way too close. And this Giants team also, it's not as bad as the media says it is. Like, yeah, they have their flaws. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contending team this year. but they could be a pretty decent team down the road this year when they gel more, when that defense has more time to work together. If you guys didn't know, like, they had a lot of new players playing their first game with the Giants in the last game. So it takes a lot of time to build that chemistry, build that cohesion. And later down the road, maybe like week 10, week 11, they could be a tough out for a playoff team. It's going to be a tough, hard-fought victory, but I have the Chicago Bears coming out on top because I just think that our front seven, especially if Robert Quinn is back, they're going to wreak havoc against this Giants offensive line. The Giants are going to be looking to establish the run early based on the fact that we allowed 100+ yards to Adrian Peterson, who was like 50 years old at this point. So the Giants are going to be trying to do the same thing the Lions did against us, but hopefully we can actually stop them this time because we have tape on them, and that Giants offensive line is not that good at all. They played horrible at the last game. If we have Robert Quinn back, if Roy Robertson-Harris, if Bilal Nichols have bounced back games, if AKIEM HICKS can be more of a factor early, the Giants' run game is going to struggle a lot. SAQUON Barkley might not be that much of a factor, and Daniel Jones might have to throw the ball like 40 or 50 times, which that would be ideal for the Chicago Bears. If we have Daniel Jones dropping back and throwing for like 40 or 50 passes, that's when our pass rush can actually get going. They could not get going in the last game because the Lions were able to run the football so effectively. So if we can shut down the run early, make this Giants offense so one-dimensional, the Bears defense is going to have a field day against this Giants offense. My offensive MVP for this game is actually going to be Allen Robinson. So even with all the drama surrounding him right now, whether or not he wants a trade or if he wants out of Chicago, like when he's going to get that extension, there's a lot of controversy right now surrounding Allen Robinson. But guys, Allen Robinson has always been like a true professional. Like, he's never let off the field stuff affect his play on the field. And I think that's going to continue even with this hanging over his head. I have him getting 120 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown as well because obviously he's Trubisky's favorite guy, which we have seen over the past 2 years. And if you guys saw how much Allen Robinson dominated this Giants team last year, like, the Giants in the secondary didn't make any crazy upgrades. So I just do not see who in this Giants secondary is going to adequately cover a guy like A-Rob. And also we have other guys now that are stepping up as well, like Darnell Mooney, Anthony Miller. We still have the tight ends in the middle of the field that we haven't seen too much of yet. Okay, we saw a little bit of Jimmy Graham. He looked okay in spurts. We haven't seen Cole Kmet yet in the receiving game. So if you see Cole Kmet, that could make things more difficult as well. So overall, guys, Mitch Trubisky has a lot of dynamic weapons to throw to now. And if he takes full advantage of them, if he can run the football effectively to begin this game, like, the Bears offense actually has the opportunity to put up a lot of points on this Giants defense. Now, do I think that's actually going to happen? Do I think we're going to score 30+ points in this game? I'm not going to predict that because I haven't seen it yet, okay? This offense is still far too inconsistent. We have to do better on third down. We have to do better in the red zone. But if we can actually accomplish that, if we can be better in certain situations, if we can be more consistent throughout the entire game, the opportunity to score 30+ is definitely there. Moving on to my defensive MVP for this game, I actually have that being AKIEM HICKS, okay? The bear himself, the monster himself. I think that if Robert Quinn is truly back, which that's going to be a big if, hopefully he does return. If Robert Quinn is there, along with Khalil Mack, these two pass rushing monsters on the outside, that's gonna probably make the Giants offensive line move guys over to help out, their tackles, because their tackles also are not particularly elite. So they're gonna get help for blocking Quinn and Mack, but that's gonna leave a lot of opportunities open for AKIEM HICKS up the middle with the interior of that Giants offensive line, which also did not play that well in the last game. So I think that leaves a lot of opportunities for AKIEM HICKS in this game. I have him getting 2 sacks and he forced fumble as well. And overall, I think he's going to be a monster in run defense as well, bottling up SAQUON Barkley. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I want to say in this video. I think I got to everything. So if I didn't get to something you want me to talk about, shoot me a DM on Instagram or leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer you. And, leave your other comments down below as well if you have any reactions to my opinions here. Let me know what you think the score of this game is going to be, what the matchups are going to be in this game, how each team is going to look. But I cannot wait for this matchup, guys. It's going to be a fun one. As always, bear down.